or total body fluid has been divided in the body into compartments. Mayroong intracellular fluid, may extracellular fluid. Okay. And the extracellular fluid is divided into interstitial fluid and intravascular fluid. Okay. So, ito yon. So, the body composition in total body weight, no? Yung body fluid is 60%. Now, if you divide the total body water with 60%, ang mangyayari ngayon yan, yung intracellular fluid is 40% of the total body weight. Okay. While the extracellular fluid is 20%. Or that comprises about 1/3 of the total body water, yung extracellular fluid. While 2/3 yung intracellular fluid. Now, the extracellular fluid, madidivide yan into 25% and 75%. So yung interstitial fluid will comprise 15% of the total body water or the total body weight. So kung gusto nyo directly compute ang total interstitial fluid, you just multiply 70 kg, multiply na kagad ng 15. Hindi nyo na kailangan lagay ng 2/3, ganyan times 1/4. So pwedeng diretso na siya. While the plasma comprises about 5% of the total body weight. So in essence, sabi nga natin, you must memorize the percentage and how to compute. Ito yung example niya. So, for a 70 kilogram man, pagka tinanong, for example, how much is the total body fluid or total body water? So, yan, multiply by 0.6. Pag tinanong naman, how much is the extracellular fluid of a 70 kilogram man? Multiply nyo na 20%. The same, with the intracellular fluid, you multiply that by 40%. For the total plasma volume, you multiply by 5%. And for the total interstitial fluid, you multiply by 15%. So yan yung direct example kung paano ko computein. And most of the time, we will give this in your exam. So dapat marunong kayo mag-compute. You don't need any calculator. Simple computation lang naman yan eh. Okay, so hindi kailangan magkaroon ng calculator. Question so far? Naintindihan ba? Sinong hindi nakaintindi? Okay, so take note ha. Sige. So, the body fluid, there are certain factors that influences how much body fluid can a person have. So one of which is lean tissue. And most of the time, this comprises of your skeletal muscle. So, if a person is more muscular, mas marami siyang water. Regarding lean tissue, just like your kidney, muscles, they comprise about 79% water, the heart is 73%, the lungs is 83%, the brain is 73%. Take note that the bone and adipose tissue, they have low water content. That is why in obese patient, although mabigat sila, yung water composition nila mas less. Another factor is with regards to age. So the younger the patient, the more water he has. Yung newborn, usually 80% ng water ang body nila. Okay. For infants, so yung newborn hanggang ano yan, neonate is up to 1 month. Yung infant hanggang 1 year. Okay. For adult, so sabi natin 60%, but kung elderly, yung mga matatanda, or usually more than 60 years old, kung makikita nyo, parang tuyo sila, no? Because their body water is just 40%. Also, the difference in male and female, sabi natin, female is 50 and for male is 60. And this is partly due to the body composition. Usually, ang female, hindi sila gaano muscular. Unlike male counterpart. Okay. So this is a graph showing you the total body water as a function of age. So habang tumatanda, bumababa yung total body water, the intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid. Also, as a difference between the fluid compartments, magkakaiba din siyempre yung electrolytes like the cations and anions. For plasma and interstitial fluid, okay, which comprise the extracellular fluid, mas marami ang the cations are sodium and ang ions are chlorides. But for intracellular fluid, a major cation is potassium and the anions is your phosphates and sulfates. Okay, so magkaiba sila. Now, for the body fluids, the normal cellular functions require normal serum osmolality. And this has been due to your action potential, no? Your membrane potential. Naturo na sa inyo yan sa physiology, no? Yung may sodium-potassium pump, so nagkakaroon ngayon ng membrane potential. And water hemostasis, maintain serum osmolality is very important. And contributing factor to osmolality, you have three main substances. Your sodium, glucose, and BUN, or blood urea nitrogen. So take note of these three substances, okay, because they are needed for the computation for serum osmolality. Sodium is the major contributor because it accounts for 90% of the extracellular osmolality. And acute changes in serum osmolality will cause rapid change in cell volume. So alam niyo naman yun na kapag mas maraming solute dun sa isang area, susunod ngayon yung isotonic fluid. Okay. So this is because of osmosis. So osmosis is spontaneous net movement of solvent molecules through a selective permeable membrane. And osmotic pressure is the pressure that develops in a solution separated by the membrane. So, yung osmotic pressures, by the way, was discovered by a person named Jean Anton Nolan in 1784 in a membrane of pig's bladder. So, doon nag-experiment siya, doon na nalaman yung osmotic pressure. Okay. And this is a sample. This picture will show you if there is a more electrolytes or solute in an area to a semi-permeable membrane, magdadaan ngayon yung fluid to the other side. So para mag-equilibrate yung osmolality nila. So how do you compute for your osmolality? So in here, you can see ang computation is you multiply sodium by twice, then you add glucose and BUN. Take note, kaya lang nagkaroon ng you divide glucose by 18 and BUN by 2.8 is because magkaiba sila ng unit. So, ang usual unit for osmolality is millimole. So, and when you have your laboratory, lalo na sa hospital, nag-request kayo sa patient, and usually ang unit na binibigay is milligrams per deciliter. So, just to compute, para maging millimoles, para pareho sila, you divide glucose by 110, by 18, and BUN by 2.8. So when you add all of them, you will have the osmolality. So example dito, yan no. So lumabas na 140 yung sodium, and then your glucose is 110 milligrams per DL, and your BUN is 20. So you divide glucose by 18 and BUN by 2.8. And then when you add all up, the osmolality is 2.93.2, which is normal. Okay? So, kung sa exam, pag nagtanong, halimbawa, millimoles per liter na yung unit ng glucose at saka BUN, hindi nyo na kailangan i-divide pa sa 18 at saka 2.8. You just directly add. No? Pero kapag binigay dun sa exam, milligrams per DL, convert nyo muna sa millimoles per liter. Okay? Nakuha ba? Sige. Now, with regards to forces inside the vessel and between the intravascular and the interstitial fluid, there are forces that are very important. These are your hydrostatic pressure and oncotic pressure. As you can see in the picture, so the pressure exerted by the pumping of the heart, intravascular, this will force the fluid going outside. While the pressure that attracts the fluid going intravascular is the osmotic oncotic pressure. Okay, so the oncotic pressure is the osmotic pressure generated by large molecule. This is exemplified by plasma proteins, majority of which is albumin. Kaya yung patients na may hypoalbuminemia, katulad ng kwashiorkor, okay, mababang protein niya, mababang oncotic pressure, lumalabas yung fluid, kaya nagigising edematous. Okay. Yung hydrostatic pressure naman, that is the pressure that is exerted due to the force of gravity by a fluid at equilibrium at any particular point in time. An example naman nito, halimbawa may congestive heart failure. So hindi ngayon makabalik yung fluid na mabuti papunta sa heart, nagkakaroon ng traffic pabalik sa circulation. So mangyayari, tumataas yung hydrostatic pressure, lumalabas ngayon yung fluid sa vessel, pumupunta sa interstitial fluid. Kaya usually ang mga may congestive heart failure, nagkakaroon ng bipedal edema. So most likely tinuro na rin naman sa physical diagnosis. Kapag ang pasyente mayroong mga ganyan, mga bipedal edema, may gravity, either may problema sa oncotic pressure or hydrostatic pressure. Okay? With regards to normal exchange of fluid and electrolytes, alam naman natin na the normal person consumes an average of 2 liters per day. Yung 2 liters na yan, yung sinasabi nilang 8 glasses per day. Okay. And approximately 75% or 1.5 liters comes from the oral intake. Yan yung mga iniinom nyo. And the rest, that is the 25%, is extracted from solid food. So kung kumain kayo ng solid food, katulad ng kanin, yung meat, fried chicken, steak, may fluid pa din yun. So once they are being oxidized and digested, magre-release pa ng water yun. So doon nanggagaling yung 25%. Okay. So this table will show you water exchange in a 60 to 80 kilogram man. So for water gain, pwede yung sensible or insensible. So yung sensible, yan yung alam natin na pumapasok sa katawan. So for oral fluid, the average is 800 to 1.5 liters. No? For solid food naman, dyan naman nagagaling yung 500 ml to 700. For the insensible naman, yan yung water of oxidation. So sa yung mga solid food or other substances na nadadigest, nagre-release din ng fluid yun. For water losses naman, the same, merong sensible and insensible. For sensible, yung kitang-kitang lumalabas, just like the urine. So halos the same siya with oral fluid intake, 800 ml to 1.5. While intestinal, so may lumalabas din through the GIT. Hindi naman pwedeng pulbos yung lalabas sa feces mo, na talagang fluid. So may fluid pa rin yan. The problem is when the person is having this bowel movement, mas maraming fluid ang nilalabas. Okay. And also, if the patient is vomiting, through GIT pa rin yun, nilalabas pa rin yun. So, kung minsan, doon nagkakaroon ng dehydration. For sweating naman, usually, a normal person, lalo na pagka nasa temperate region ka, hindi ka pinagpapawisan or very minimal. Unless na nasa temperate, nasa warm region ka, mainit, papapawisan ka talaga, or you're doing some activities, dadami ngayon yung water loss mo, as much as 4 liters per hour. Lalo na pag nagsasauna. No? For the insensible water loss naman, kahit na hindi ka mag-exert ng effort, meron pa rin evaporation. That is to the lungs and skin. And the average is 600 ml. Now, pwedeng tumaas yan if the patient is febrile. No? Pag nilalagnat, siyempre mas mataas ang evaporation. Or, if the patient is meron siyang certain disease, nagtatakip niya siya, English yung paghinga niya. So, mas malataas yung chance na mag-evaporate. Okay? Actually, yan yung reason kung bakit yung mga dogs parang nagpapanting nakalabas pa yung bigla kasi wala silang gaanong further temperature regulation. Mas mabilis mag-lose sila ng water para at least yung evaporation, mag-lose sila ng heat. Okay. So, yan yung reason behind that. So, this slide will just show you again kung ano yung daily water loss. But importantly, yung 600 ml na insensible to the lungs and skin, you just take note that the skin, yung insensible niya is 75%, which equates to 450 ml. Pero yung sa lungs is 150. So, 25% lang siya. So, just take note of that. Pwede namin itanong yan. Questions so far? Wala. So, we'll just continue. No? So, classification of body fluid changes. So, ito na yung mga pagbabago sa body. It could be the volume, the concentration, or composition. For the volume, so there are different types of fluid. It could be isotonic, hypotonic, or hypertonic. Pag sinabing isotonic, pareho sila ng tonicity. Either it is the fluid, the only loss is the fluid itself, pero yung electrolyte niya almost the same. So, the normal osmolality of the intracellular fluid and extracellular is usually from the range of 290 to 310. So, yan yung normal. Because anything na beyond, magkakaroon ng fluid shield. Okay. So, very important yan. Kaya nga yung mga IV fluid, yung mga sinasaksak, for example, yung patient, nagsuka ng tarik, lalagyan niya ng IV fluid, kailangan yan ay isotonic siya. So if isotonic solution is added or lost from the body, only the extracellular fluid volume changes. Little lang, konti lang ang nawawala sa intracellular kasi isotonic eh. So hindi niya nakakatak yung fluid from the cell. So there will be no net movement of water from the intracellular to the extracellular. So extracellular lang ang na-eapektuhan. And this could lead to volume deficit or volume excess. For volume deficit, so the ECF deficit, yun yung most common. Ano ba yung possible causes niyan? Yung sabi natin, loose bowel movement or vomiting. Okay. So, isotonic siya. So, GI secretion, usually the normal is about 5 to 8 liters per day. So, kahit wala kayong ininom, no, either you did not take anything, water or food, meron pa rin fluid and GIT. So, ito yung mga fluid composition of the GI secretion. Usually, the stomach can secrete as much as 1 to 2 liters per day. Okay. Small intestine is 2 liters to 3 liters per day. Okay. Colon usually very minimal kasi ang function ng colon is to absorb the water. Okay. For pancreas, the normal secretion is 600 to 800 and usually it contains the digestive enzymes. And for bile, kasama na dyan yung mga bicarbonates, you know, yung alkalitic fluid, and the bile itself. Usually, it's 300 to 800. Take note, yung bile, very important yan. Especially, later on, when you go into third year, there are certain procedure na ginagawa. For example, naglagay ng T-tube, naglagay ng tube sa biliary tree, nakalabas yun, may nakalabas na tube. So for example, may sakit, obstructive jaundice. So para yung valve hindi bumalik sa system dahil na nilalaw yung patient, naglalagay ng tube. Ngayon, ang ginagawa ngayon, yung monitor kung ilan yung output na lumalabas doon. So alam nyo, basically, na output dapat na lumalabas per day is 300 to 800. Bakit? For example lang to ha. Kasi kung yung tube na yon, ang valve lumalabas 300 to 800, ibig sabihin nun, baka may obstruction distally, kaya hindi tumutuloy, lumalabas lang siya sa tube. Pero kung halimbawa lumalabas 50 ml lang, ibig sabihin nun, most likely, yung valve, dumidiretso na papunta sa intestine. So yun yung example lang yan para alam nyo lang na important pa din na malaman nyo na ilan yung amount na lumalabas sa GIT. Okay? Now, the ECF volume deficit, other causes, yung soft tissue injury, may mga crushing injury dahil kumakatas yan. Okay? Kahit na yung mga sipon infection, yung mga burn patient, no? Soft tissue injury yun. Intra-abdominal infection, example, may obstruction. Usually, you can see that through the x-ray. Lumalaki yung mga intestine, then there is fluid there. No? May subject ba kayong radiology? Ngayon pa lang yan o first year?
Wala po.
First year. So usually sa first year, most likely pinakitaan na kayo ng air fluid level. Kahit yung sa stomach, no? Mayroon tinatawag na Magellan-Glacé, no? Yun yung air fluid level sa stomach. So makikita nyo may fluid pa rin dun sa loob. Okay. So pagka obstructed siya, nagdadilate, naiipon yung fluid, that is third space loss. Okay? So again, no? Just to show you yung mga forces, no, for fluid loss. Surgery, pag inoperahan may blood loss, so that is still loss of fluid. Ileus and oliguria. So these are the signs and symptoms for volume deficit. Weight loss. So kaya nga yung lalo na specifically yung mga pediatric patients. Diba? Sabi natin kanina, the younger the patient, the more water they have. Okay. So, kapag nagsuka ang pediatric patient, lalo na yung mga gusto mag-pediatrician, mas vulnerable sila. Kaya sila usually kailangan emergently na lagyan ng IV fluid pagka nagtatay, nagsusuka. Pero pagka adult, usually naman yan, ay hindi, kaya naman niya yan. So kasi mas less ang fluid ng adult kaysa sa pediatric. Okay, and then usually yan, sa pediatric part, titimbangin pa yan, o ilan na ba fluid loss na ito? O tapos pati yung diaper, o ilan na lang ihi na titira dyan, lumalang meron pa ba? Okay, because they could have oliguria. Okay, skin turgor, kukurutin mo, ay hindi bumabalik yung skin. As a response sa heart, nagkakaroon ng tachycardia, di ba? Kasi kailangan ma-maintain yung cardiac output. Or you can have orthostatic or hypotension, collapse neck pain, okay, GIT ileus. Okay. So how would you treat if you have volume deficit? Usually, sa emergency room, we usually give crystalloids. So lahat ng IV fluid na nasa bote doon, usually crystalloid yan. And this could be in the form of plain fluid or D5 containing. So here, just to show you, this is a table of electrolyte solution with parenteral or IV administration. So, kino-compare dito yung extracellular fluid with other crystalloids. So, ano ba example ng crystalloids yan? You have your lactated ringer, yan. Yung 0.9 sodium chloride is also NSS, that is normal saline. The same lang siya. No? Or normal sodium. So, the same lang siya, normal solution. Yung D5.45, usually yung paborito yan ng mga pediatric. Okay. It has lower sodium, but because it is D5 containing, meron yung glucose, so makaka-adjust ngayon yung osmolarity. Wait, sorry. And other fluid, yung D5 water and 3% sodium chloride. By the way, yung D5 water, wala yung sodium and potassium. Water lang siya na may asukal. And usually, D5 containing, lahat siya may dextrose na, dahil D5, 50 grams per liter. So, yun yung ano niya. Ngayon, tatanungin nyo, ano ba ang difference? Ano ba kailangan ibigay? Kung D5 o plain LR? Kasi usually yan, dekahon yan. Halos lahat ng doktor na hindi gano'n nag-a-analyze ng mabuti ng patient, nasa automatic D5, bigay tayo D5 LR. Malalaman nyo yan pag nag-rotate na kayo sa hospital. Bigyan yan D5 LR. Bakit D5 LR? Kasi ang reason nila, halimbawa, patient, i-NPO nyo, walang kakainin. May glucose yan. At least may glucose siya. Pagkukumpute mo yung glucose ng 1 liter, yung sa 50 grams. Kumpute mo lang yan sa ilan ba ang kilocalorie ng 4, di ba? O times 4. So, ilan lang ang kilocalorie na. So, very negligible. Okay. The problem with D5 is magiging tataas ang kanyang osmolality. So, kung minsan, hindi siya appropriate for certain patients kasi magkakaroon ng osmotic diuresis. So, nadidipit mo yung purpose. Dehydrated na ka, bibigyan mo pa ng D5. So, kailangan bibigay D5. So, yung D5, usually binibigay yan for especially mga patients na kailangan control yung sugar. Halimbawa, diabetic yung patient. Ano yung bibigay mo? D5 o plain? So, may sabi plain. O, show of hands lang. Wala ko namang grade to. Bilis. Ano sabihin nyo? Plain? Sinong plain? O sinong D5? Diabetic yung patient. Halimbawa, may kamag-anak kayong diabetic. O, sagot. O, ikaw, ano? D5 o plain bibigay mo? D5, o. Sino agree sa kanya? D5. Ikaw, doktora. D5 o plain? D5, okay. Sige, taas na kayo. Sino ang D5? Diabetic ang patient. Sino plain? Mag-commit na kayo. Wala sa mag-grade to eh. Gusto ko lang makakita sinong show of hands lang. Sino magbibigay ng D5? Oh, sino magbibigay ng plain? Yung lahat na hindi nagtaas plain? Sagot na kayo para sasagutin ko na. Ikaw. Plain, ikaw. D5 o plain? O, sige ulit. Isa pa, taas na naman. Sino plain?
Sabi ko na lang.
Sino D5? Sige. Ganito yan. Pagka diabetic yung patient, alam mo established diabetic, magbibigay ka ng anti-diabetic medication, di ba? So, dapat ang ibibigay mong IV fluid, D5 containing. Bakit? Kasi pag nagbigay ka ng bigay ka ng insulin, bigla babagsak yung sugar. So at least mapabuffer ni D5 yung pagbaba, bigla-bigla. So unless na sobrang taas niya. Pero usually, dahil nabibigay ka ng anti-diabetic medication, usually in the form of insulin, para na mabuffer hindi biglang babagsak. Kasi yan ang problema ng diabetic patient, di ba? I'm sure may mga kamag-anak dito diabetic. Kung isa yung magulang niya, magsasaksak ng insulin madaling araw. Naninigas ako, nanghihina ako, bigyan niyo kagad ng candy o painumin ako. Bakit? Kasi bagsak yung sugar. Kasi hindi niya nababuffer. So, halos the same siya. Usually yung plain ang binibigay kasi para ma-prevent mo yung osmotic diuresis. But if you have certain disease na kailangan ng D5, katulad ng diabetic na may anti-diabetic medication, you give D5 containing. Okay? Kasi yung pinagtatalunan namin sa conference kung minsan, bakit yung binibigay mo? Okay? Para may idea lang kayo. Okay. So, alternative resuscitative fluid. So, aside from crystalloid, meron ding other fluid na pwede ibigay, like yung colloids. Ano ba itong mga ito? No? These are plasma volume expander. So, by the term itself, no, plasma volume expander. So, paano siya mag-expand? So, pag nagbigay ka nito, usually they have high molecular weight. This could be in the form of albumin, dextran, esteril, hydroxyethyl starch, gelatin. So, ang mangyayari ngayon, dahil malaki ang kanyang molecular weight, yung oncotic pressure niya mataas, hihilain niya yung intracellular fluid or yung interstitial fluid papunta sa intravascular. No? Para mag-expand yung intravascular fluid mo. But that is just a temporary solution. Kasi kung minsan na-apektuhan mo yung intracellular fluid, nagkakaroon ng problema. So this is not usually the first line of choice. Okay. Ginagamit lang to for certain condition, lalo na pagka-emergent. No? At wala ka ng ibang extracellular fluid na pwedeng ibigay or ano na siya, sobra-sobra na yung binigay mong fluid, pwedeng ito na ibigay mo, lalo na sa operating room. Okay. So as you can see, this is a table of the colloids, no? Albumin, dextran, no? Ang laki ng kanilang molecular weight. And as you can see, yung mga iba, no? Lalo na yung albumin 25%, as molality, malaki. Okay. So these are just a picture. It shows you different types of IV fluid. No? Yung nasa left side, those are crystalloids. Naka-plastic yan. Dati nakabote, pero ngayon ang nakabote na lang usually are your colloids. Katulad yung nasa right side, those are esteril or esters ng starch. So, kung merong volume deficit, anong kailangan gawin? So, halimbawa, may pasyente na assist nyo, ay, dehydrated to, may volume deficit. So, anong kailangan gawin? I-replace nyo na walang fluid. So, that is quantity replacement. So, paano nyo ngayon malalaman kung kano karaming bibigay? Usually, kapag may deficit na pasyente, you have to address 3 components. One is the daily requirement. Number 2, kung kano karami ang nawala, so that is the deficit. And number 3, kung kano karami pa yung mawawala. Okay. Halimbawa, ongoing, nagsusuka siya. Siyempre, hindi mo ba isipin, ako, nabawasan, kailangan ma-replace pa natin. So, yun yung 3 component. Okay. So, yung quantified daily fluid requirement, yan yung una-una, deficit and ongoing loss. And also, you identify concomitant electrolyte imbalance. Kasi pagka nagkaroon ng volume deficit, most likely, there are certain electrolytes also that is being involved na lalabas ng katawan. Okay. And this is how to compute first for the daily fluid requirement. So, kailangan alam nyo to kasi magbibigay kami sa exam and kung minsan lumalabas sa board exam to. So, how to compute. This is first, magkaibang computation for adults and pediatric patients. For pediatric patients and patients usually less than 50 kilograms, ito ang computation. So una, again, anong tanong? Anong una yung aalamin? Yung weight ng patient. Okay? Ngayon, for certain weight, lalo sa pediatric, may fluid requirement for the, per kilogram. So, halimbawa, ang patient is 10 kilogram. So, yung first 10 kilograms, ang fluid requirement is 100 cc per kilogram per day. Okay? Kung per hour ang gustong computation, 4 cc per kilogram per hour. Now, for the second 10 kilogram, for example, ang pasyente ay 15 kilograms. Yung unang 10 niya, kukumpitin mo na sa 100. Okay. So, ano yan? Ilan yan? 100 times 10. 1,000. Ilan yan? 1,000. So, that is 1,000 or 1 liter per day. Eh ngayon, 15 siya. May extra pang 5. Diba? So, yung 5 na yun, pupasok yun sa second 10 kilogram. So, ngayon yung 5, multiply mo sa 50. So, ilan yun? 250. Tama? So, i-add mo ngayon sila dahil 15 kilogram siya. So, ang fluid requirement niya ay 1,250 ml per day. So, yun ang daily requirement. Tama ba? For example, ang pasyente is 22 kilogram. Yung first 10 niya uli ay 1 liter na. Yung second 10 niya, dahil 22 siya, so 10 times 50 ay 500. So 1.5 na. Eh, meron pa siyang dalawang extra na 2 kilograms. So 2 times 20, ilan yan? 40. So ang daily requirement niya ay 1,540 ml. Okay? Nakuha niyo ba kung paano compute? Sige, kasi magtatanong tayo sa exam dyan. Okay, nakuha ha? Dali lang naman siya eh. That is, take note for pediatric and patients less than 50 kilograms. Okay? Ginagawa din yan sa hospital. Kino-compute yan. Lalo na mga surgical patients, hindi lang naman adult, yung mga ino-operahan din na pediatric. So, kailangan alam mo yung daily requirement. Now, for the daily requirement for adults, this has been nakalagay na ito sa mga journals like the NCBI and PubMed. Those are scientific journals. And usually, this is the current practice. So, for adults, iba ang may standard. So, the fluid intake recommendation were 30 ml per kilogram body weight. So, yan yung pinaka-standard, 30 ml per kilogram. Okay. So, kung halimbawa, ang pasyente ay 70 kilogram, yan. Ilan ang fluid requirement niya? Times 30, 2,100 ml. Okay? So, madali lang. Ngayon, ang maganda kasi dyan, especially for patients na mga kailangan ng, halimbawa, naka-NPO ng matagal, hindi kumakain. Paano yung calorie niya? Babagsak yung katawan. Ganon din. Kasi ang daily caloric requirement, nasa 30 din siya. So, that is 30 kilocalorie per kilogram. Okay, so, para lang may idea kayo kung paano kinocompute yung daily caloric requirement. The same siya sa fluid requirement. Okay? Sige. So, ito yung example kanina. No? Pag may pediatric naman, 40 kilograms. So, yung first 10 times 100, 1 liter. Yung second 10 ay 500 ml. 50 ml. So, magiging 500 ml siya. Eh kaso may excess siya ng 20 dun sa unang 10. So 20 times 20 equals 400. So pag ilan mo lahat, so ang total fluid requirement ng patient ay 1,900 ml. Okay? Kaya-kaya? Okay. Now for quantitative, in addition sa replacement, kung mayroong mga active loss or deficit, so for patient with fever, usually you must add 500 ml per degree more than 38. So, halimbawa, febrile pasyente, nilalagnat, na-complete mo na yung daily requirement. Eh, ang lagnat niya 39 degree centigrade. So, mag-add ka ng 500. Okay? Now, in certain patients, lalo na yung mga merong 4-hour abdominal exposure or increased pressure sa abdomen, no? Sometimes you will have to add 5 liters, lalo na may mga third space loss. Kasi kung isa na-occupy na ng buong lumen yung fluid. So, ano yung mga fluid na binibigay? So, for volume deficit, LR, MSS, yan yung pinaka-common. For GIT loss, you can give sodium chloride. By the way, kung halimbawa nag-bleed yung pasyente, bawa nasaksak or naglasgas siya, so hemorrhagic shock, maraming volume, nawalan siya about 2 liters. Anong fluid ang maganda ibigay? Is it LR, plain MSS ba? Normosol, D5 water. Ano ibibigay niyo? Oh, anybody? Yun, nasa likod. Lalaki. Pinakadulo. Anong gusto mo ibigay? Anong fluid ang naisip mo lang at gusto mo ibigay? Any idea? Ano, LR ba? NSS? MM? O colloid? Ano ba? Sige na, any. Ang tingin mo? Normosol. Oh, anybody? Oh, yung isa na lang. Isa na lang pa. Yun, nasa gitna. Yan. Ganun. Anong fluid gusto mo ibigay? Bakit NSS sa tingin niyo? Usually NSS. Kasi, pagka may blood loss, ano advantage ng NSS? Pwede ka mag-piggyback doon sa NSS. Pwede mo ihalo yung blood sa NSS pag nag-transfuse ka ng blood. Okay. Pagka LR kasi kung minsan nagko-coagulate, kaya NSS ang mas preferred. Lalo pag may blood loss. Okay? Sige. Pag insensible losses lang, walang electrolyte na nawala, you give D5 water. Okay. Lalo na yung mga heat stroke. For volume excess naman, there are, paano ba dumadami yung fluid ng katawan ng tao? No? So possible causes niyan iatrogenic, no? Karaniwan yan, no? Especially in patient. Naiwan nakapastrip yung IV fluid, tulo ng tulo, mamaya nagmamanas na yung pasyente, sabi, Dok, hindi ako makahinga kasi nagpulmonary edema na siya. So yan ang pinaka-usual cause, no? Iatrogenic. No? Nagkamali yung nagbabantay. Lalo na sa government, kukunti lang yung nurse. Sabihin ng nurse, bantayan yung fluid ha. Yung bantay naman, nagsa-cellphone. Mamaya ubos na. Ma'am, ubos na po yung tubig. Kasi yung pasyente, so, other causes, halimbawa, hindi makaihi, no? Organ disease like renal failure. Signs and symptoms, paano malalaman volume overload or excess, no? Pulmonary overload, ang pinaka-common dyan, pulmonary edema. Pupunta sa lungs yung fluid, parang nalulunod na siya. For cardiovascular, increased cardiac output, yung central venous pressure taas, distended neck pain, tissue pwede magmanas, no? And weight gain. Usually yun ang pinaka-common, lalo na pagka-surgical, inooperahan, halimbawa, trauma, sinaksak, dugo, pinuksan yung tiyan. Ngayon yung anesthesiologist, ako hypotensive, papastrip yan. Bahala na, basta tumaas yung BP. Huwag ka na. Pagkataas ng opera, na-control na yung bleeding. Tamo, manas na siya. Volume overload yun. So again, yung mga signs and symptoms, weight gain, edema, increased cardiac output, CVP, distended neck pain, murmur, bowel edema, and pulmonary edema. So how do you treat pagka may bawal? Unexpectedly na kayo nagbabantay, no? Pag ng relative nyo, tapos na volume excess. So, ano dapat gawin? Tigil nyo muna yung fluid. Okay? You can give either diuretic para umihi. Lalo na yung mga patients na merong renal failure, makakatulong yun. You can give 50% of maintenance fluid for patients with cardiac, renal, and liver failure kasi hindi sila magandang responder for fluid challenges. Question? None? We go now to regulation of water concentration and sodium. And you usually have three main hormones that will affect the fluid and water, sodium and water concentration. And these are your aldosterone, which ang important organ dito is your adrenal gland. Your heart naman can release ANH or the atrionatriuretic peptide. Okay. For the pituitary gland, they can secrete ADH, which can affect the kidneys for water reabsorption. So, just to summarize yung mga hormone, na-discuss naman na sa inyo ito. Yung vasopressin or ADH, synthesized by hypothalamus. And usually, this is transported to the posterior pituitary gland. So, if it's posterior pituitary gland, hindi siya yung gumagawa, storage lang siya. And they are stored in secretory granules sa terminal neurohypophysis. Depolarization of nerve terminal, this will release the hormone. And hypertonicity or decreased ECM volume, arterial blood pressure, this will stimulate secretion. And of course, madedetect ngayon ni hypothalamus kasi mayroong mga receptors doon na, ay, teka lang, hypertonic yung blood, mag-release tayo ng antidiuretic hormone. Okay? Vasopressin leads to water retention by the kidney. Kaya nga antidiuretic. So, hindi ka iihi para ma-retain yung fluid. Yung aldosterone naman, synthesized and released by the adrenal cortex, and it is related yung RAAS, renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Perfusion pressure activates the RAA and release stimulate by angiotensin 2. So yung high plasma potassium directly stimulate aldosterone also. Increased active transport of sodium potassium ATP is pumped, leading to increase in sodium reabsorption and potassium excretion. Kaya nga itong aldosterone related talaga sa potassium metabolism. And take note, ang effect ng aldosterone nasaan? Nasa distal segment of the renal tubule, hindi sa proximal. Okay? Sa pharma, meron yun na gamot na para ma-apektuhan yung proximal. Pero for normal physiology, ang effect nito, aldosterone, ay nasa distal segment. Okay? Take note ha. Now for atrionatriuretic peptides, ANP, other name niya, atriene, auriculin, atriopeptine, calciopeptine. So the same lang yan, isang substance lang yan. And this has been released by the cardiac cell. So kapag mayroong congestion, no, mangyayari dyan, madedetect ni heart, uy, ang dami natin fluid kasi na-i-stretch yung muscle. Magre-release ngayon siya para umihing pasyente mabawasan yung fluid. So, stimulate by increased the right atrial pressure, biological active ANP produce proactin, increase urinary excretion of sodium and water, chloride, potassium, phosphate, calcium, magnesium, at the distal tubule, and smooth muscle relaxation, vascular, and decrease aldosterone renin. Okay, so yan ang effect ng ANP. We go now to changes in concentration. If water only is added or lost, concentration of osmotically active particle changes. Yan yung kaibahan ng isotonic. And 90% of osmotically active particle sa ECM is sodium. So sodium will reflect the tonicity of the body fluid. So take note, ang sodium, ang normal daily requirement ng sodium ay 1 to 2 milliequivalent per kilogram per day. So importante yon kasi part yan ng management, lalo na pag nagtatay, nagsusukay ang pasyente, lalo na may derangement sa sodium, kailangan alam nyo yung normal na requirement. And, syempre, kailangan alam nyo rin yung normal value. Ano ba ang normal value ng sodium sa blood? So, pakita ko muna. Sa normal value ng sodium ay 135 to 145 milliequivalents per liter. So, dapat kabisado nyo ito. Kasi kahit na anong gawin nyo, matapos na kayo, dapat alam nyo yung normal. Okay? So, pagka mababa, less than 135, that is already hyponatremia. And may level yon. Paano masasabing mild, moderate, o severe? Kapag ka 130 to 135, mild lang yun. Pero pagka 125 to 129, moderate, and severe na siya pag 125. And marami ng signs and symptoms na lumalabas na very deleterious to the patient, lalo na pag severe. Paano naman masasabing acute or chronic? Pag less than 48 hours, nag-last yung that is acute. Pero pag more than 48 hours, that's already chronic. So ano yung mga possible cause ng hyponatremia? Kung isotonic hyponatremia, pwede yan yung mga patient na may hypertriglyceridemia o hyperproteinemia. Okay. So yan yung mga possible cause. For hypertonic naman, ano naman pwedeng cause? Increase in solutes like glucose and BUN. So yung guideline recommend that in case of hypertonic and isotonic, you just para i-treat yung hyponatremia na hyper at saka ISO, you treat the underlying cause. For example, diabetic yung pasyente, no? Increased circulating glucose. I-treat mo lang yung ano niya, yung glucose niya pababae mo. Makokorek na ngayon yung hyponatremia niya. The same with the hyperproteinemia, no? Or hypertriglyceridemia. Bigyan mo ng gamot, pag napababa mo yun, bababa na rin yung, tataas na yung sodium niya. So, yun ang ibig sabihin nito. Okay? So, yan, no? So, yung mga possible causes. High at saka normal. For hypotonic hyponatremia naman, ang possible cause are your depletion. So, naubos siya. This could be excessive intake or iatrogenic or drug. Depletion naman, decreasing sodium intake, GIT losses or diuretic. Now, for European guidelines states that hyponatremia with measures osmolality of less than 275 always reflect hypotonic hyponatremia. So, ito lang ang gusto kong i-bound sa mind nyo is that, kasi guideline to eh. Pagka kumuha ng blood, tapos nag-reflector yung serum osmolality, basta less than 275, automatic isipin ay hyponatremic, hypotonic hyponatremia ito. Okay? Hindi siya hypertonic, hindi siya iso. Tsaka hindi siya hypernatremia, it is hyponatremia. Liwanag? Sige. So take note ha, pwede ko tayo sa exam yan. Okay, so yan nga for hypotonic hyponatremia at yung mga causes, so increased sodium intake, GI loss, renal loss, and primary renal disease. Signs and symptoms, headache, confusion, coma, pwede siya makomatose, okay, CBS, cardiovascular hypertension, bradycardia, weakness, anorexia, vomiting, lacrimation, salivation, and for the GUT is oliguria. So guideline to differentiate the cause, usually you have two steps. Okay. Yung unang step is interpret osmolality on a spot urine. Okay. Sorry. So yung urine osmolality equal or less than 100, consider this maximally diluted urine when relative excess water intake. Example yan, polydipsia. Pagka more than 100 naman, consider mo naman antidiuretic hormone. Okay. So, basta pagka spot urine sample, yung osmolality ng urine, pagka 100 lang ang value na tatandaan nyo. Pag more than, isipin mo, ano yan, antidiuretic hormone. No? Inappropriate secretion ng antidiuretic hormone. Pero pagka less than, isipin mo polydipsia, okay, mga manginginom, no? Yung mga beer photomania. For pagkatapos naman nun, you just ask for urine and blood sodium check. So hindi ko na tatanong to, masyado na siyang toxic. Okay, just for your consumption na lang to. So how do you compute for sodium deficit? So alam naman natin, ang kalagitnaan ng 135 to 145 is 140. So paano mo kukumputin kung ilan ang sodium deficit? Again, dapat alam mo ang normal value. So normal value, alam mo yung how to compute for the total body water. So you weigh in kilogram times 0.6, that is the total body water, di ba? Gagawin mo lang, 140 minus dahil hyponatremia, mas mababa yan sa 135. So you just, baway, patient, nag-extract ka. Tapos lumabas, ang sodium niya, 120 lang. So hyponatremia yun, di ba? So para malalaman kung kaano kalaki deficit. So 140 minus 120 times 60% ng 70 kilograman, ang magiging deficit niya ay 840. Nakuha niyo ba yun? Nakuha? O merong di nakakuha? So madali lang naman siya, no? Kunin mo lang ang total body water, i-multiply mo yung difference nung normal sa hypo, yung actual patient. So, alam mo na ang sodium deficit. So, kung titignan nyo dito sa baba, there is a table there. Ano ba ang fluid na mataas ang sodium? So, mataas ay NSS. Okay. So, most probably, yun ang maganda ibigay. Pero kung you have to correct, severe hyponatremia siya, pwedeng ibigay as much as 3% sodium chloride. Okay. So, yung management, determine muna kung kailangan na emergency therapy and 3-factor guide treatment. So, dahil alam mo ng ano siya, deficit siya, tingnan yung severity, degree, duration, and volume ng pasyente. Okay, ito yung example kanina, di ba? So, 120 lumabas, that is already less than 125, so severe. Tama? So, acute treatment of moderate severe patient, ang paano ka magko-correct? With the goal of increased sodium concentration by 4 to 6 millimole in the first few hours. Hanggang 4 to 6 lang. Hindi pwedeng mas mataas. Because, kung pag mas mataas, you can have osmotic demyelination syndrome. Pagka rapidly kinorek mo, nagbigay ka ng maraming sodium, masyado mataas, rapidly, magkakaroon ka ng osmotic demyelination syndrome, so maapektuhan yung mga brain cells. So kaya hindi ginagawa yung masyado mataas or rapid correction for sodium. So nangyayari yun. So baka makomatos yung pasyente, kasalanan mo pa dahil mabilis mong kinorek. So hanggang 4 to 6 millimoles per liter lang. So what are the risk factors for osmotic demyelination syndrome? Yan, pag sobrang bagsak siya, 105 lang, hypokalemia, alcohol disorder, malnutrition, liver disease. Okay. So, overly rapid correcting. More than 6 to 8 at 24 hours. So, yun ang magiging effect. Lumalabas sa board exam yan, usually ang tanong sa board exam is, what electrolyte disturbance will cause correcting, what electrolyte disturbance when corrected rapidly will produce osmotic demyelination syndrome. Example. So, tatanong isip sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium. So, alam nyo na, sa sodium siya. Okay? Sige. So, for treatment with severe symptoms, so, infusion of hypertonic 3% saline, pero kailangan nakamonitor yan at saka hindi more than 4 to 6. So, yun ang pinaka-importante. I-bypass ko na to. So, for consumption na lang yan. Hindi na ako magtatanong dyan kasi masyado na siyang malalim. For hypernatremia naman, that is more than 145. So, anong pwedeng cause? Lack of free access water. Paano nangyari yan? Yung mga umiinom ng tubig alat, kasi wala nang water nasa isla. Okay. GIT losses. So, hypernatremia can be hypervolemic, normovolemic, and hypovolemic. Kaya ang hypervolemic naman, ibig sabihin yan, most likely iatrogenic yan. Nagbigay ka ng fast drip mo yung sodium chloride. Okay. Normovolemic naman due to diabetes insipidus, diuretic, renal disease. For hypovolemic, the same, no? Diabetic insipidus, osmotic diuresis, and renal failure. Okay, so this is just the rundown of what are the possible causes of hypernatremia based on volume status. So, pagka-hypo, kino-compute ang sodium deficit, tama? Pagka-hypernatremia, anong kukumpute mo naman? Water deficit. Kasi konti ang fluid, marami ang solute. Okay? So, paano mo naman kukumputin ang water deficit pag hypernatremia? So, take note, water deficit pag hypernatremia. So, just you can compute yung kung ano yung volume na serong sodium, nag-extract ka, 150 o hyper yan. I-divide mo lang siya ng 140, which is the normal quantity minus 1. Then, you multiply that by total body water. So, the same, yung 60% at saka yung kilogram ng pasyente. Okay. So, ito yung example niyan. So, yung computation, you have 3 liters. So, usually, you manage this by giving 3 liters ng D5 water. So, kapag ka-deficit, pag hypernatremia at water deficit, you just give water, D5 water lang. Hindi ka magbibigay ng LR, dahil may sodium yun. Hindi ka magbibigay ng NSS. So, you just give D5 water. Nakuha ba? So, pwede ko itanong sa exam, halimbawa, 3 liters ng NSS, 3 liters ng plain LR. So, sabi mo, para-pareho 3 liters, ano kayo muna bibigay? So, D5 water sa doon. Nakuha? Sige. So, part of the treatment for symptomatic hypernatremia, tignan nyo muna yung onset. Is it acute or chronic? So, based on 24 hours. So, for acute, you correct the sodium at the rate of 2 to 3 milliequivalents per liter per hour. For chronic naman, with no or mild symptoms, you correct at the rate of 0.5. So, mas mababa siya. Presence of volume deficit in hypernatremia, you restore the intravascular volume and acetonic sodium chloride prior to free water administration. Pag may volume deficit. Okay. So, yung kaninang inano natin, di ba, may deficit siya ng 3 liters, di ba? Paano mo ibibigay yun? So, you just give 1/2 for the first 24 hours and 1/2 for the second 24 hours. Okay. So, hindi mo siya ibibigay ng dire-diretso na 24 hours yung 3 liters. Kasi mamaya isipin nyo, meron siyang deficit, water deficit na 3 liters, fast trip na natin yan para matapos na. So, hindi ganun, ha? Okay? Because, if you treat this with fast infusion of water, pwede magkaroon ng brain edema and herniation. Okay? So, just to differentiate, anong clinical manifestation ng hyponatremia and hypernatremia? So, na-discuss na natin kanina yan. Para lang meron makita yung table. Now, other electrolytes na pwede makita, no? Like, just take your potassium, that is 90% of your intracellular fluid, excreted in the urine. Dalawa ang pinaka-importanteng electrolyte usually na laging nire-request, that is sodium and potassium. Kaya importante rin na malaman nyo yung daily requirement. No? So kung ang daily requirement ng sodium ay 1 to 2 per milliequivalents per kilogram per day, ang potassium ay 0.5 to 1. So, tandaan nyo yan. Kailangan hindi makalimutan yun. And the normal value ng potassium naman ay 3.5 to 5 milliequivalents per liter. Kasi silang dalawa ang electrolyte na laging nagkakaroon ng derangement at malaking effect sa body. And take note, hyperkalemia is the most dangerous electrolyte disorder. Hyper. Kaya nga yan yung ginagamit sa lethal injection eh. No? Magsasaksak ka ng mataas na potassium para mamatay yung pasyente. Okay? Titigil yung tibok niya. So, ano yung mga ECG changes na makikita pagka hyperkalemic? So, tandaan nyo to ha. High peak D wave, widened QRS complex, at prolonged PR interval. Okay? Sinabi ko na sa inyo, tandaan nyo. So, tatlo yan. So, ibig sabihin, pwede may except. Okay? Sige. So, yan ang example ng itsura, no? Yung peak T wave, makikita nyo ang taas, no? Yung T. Kung minsan merong indiscriminate P waves. Tsaka, yan, yung widened QR complex. Lapad niya. Signs and symptoms, yan, arrhythmia, pwede mag-arrest, no? Kaya nga sa lethal injection. Weakness, paralysis, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, oliguria. So, when you see a patient who are hyperkalemic, ano ang kailangan gawin? Very common ang hyperkalemia, lalo na yung mga may renal disease, yung kailangan ng transplant. Yung meron ng chronic kidney disease, CKD5. Hindi na nila maitapon yung potassium. Meron dati kasi nung nag-start ang renal transplant dito sa FEU, kasagsagan ng renal transplant, resident ako doon. Hindi ko na sasabihin ko anong year. Ang dami transplant, mga foreigner, nagpupunta sa FEU. So we usually have 4 transplant per day. And ang isang OR lang, 2 million. Bayad ng pasyente. Anyway, ang nangyayari kasi, may renal failure sila, kakain ngayon sila ng fruits. Kakain sila ng grapes kasi uso sa Middle East yan. Eh, taas ng potassium ng balat ng ano. Minsan nag-hyperkalemia yan. Ako, toxic na. Yun na, taas-taas ng potassium niya. So, anong kailangan gawin? Ano muna yung mga cause? Yan. Inadequate intake, excessive renal excretion, direct loss of stool. Hypo pala to. Mamaya ako ikwento yung hyper. For hypo, sorry, hindi, nag-slide show pa. For hyper, anong kailangan gawin? Stop lahat ng potassium containing. You do ECG. And you must give 10% calcium gluconate, 5 to 10 ml. You can give sodium potassium exchange resin, diuretics, and hemodialysis. Kaya yung pasyente na hemodialysis kagad ng time na yun. Itong 1 ampule of D5 dextrose plus 10 unit of regular insulin. Ano ba mechanism yan? So, naalala nyo sa physiology, tinatawag na glucose potassium co-transport. So, sa cell membrane, pagka nagbigay ka ng insulin ng D5, papasok sa loob ng cell yung potassium at saka yung glucose. Diba? So, bababa ngayon yung potassium. Yan yung mechanism nun. Okay, kaya pwede siyang gawin. Sige. For hypokalemia naman, that is less than 3.5, anong pwedeng cause yan? Inadequate intake, excessive excretion. ECG changes niyan iba naman. Very prominent kasi ECG changes sa potassium. It could be flattened T wave, ST segment depression, and U wave. So take note din. Tatlo lang yan. Okay. So, signs and symptoms can be asymptomatic. Pwede rin mag-arrest yung pasyente. Pag nag-arrest naman siya, mag-ispasm naman yan. No? Decreased reflex, fatigue, weakness, paralysis. GIT, in-use, and constipation. So, how do you treat hypokalemia? For asymptomatic, tolerate enteral nutrition. Pagka nakakakain at wala naman siyang symptom, you just give calcium chloride 40 mg. Enteral, ipapainumin nyo lang, isang tableta lang, tapos na. Pagka hindi naman siya makalunog, pero wala naman symptom, bigyan nyo na ng IV. Ganun din, same dose, kasi yung oral 40, gawin mo IV, 2 dose na 20. Okay? So that's how you correct. Pag asymptomatic. Pero pag symptomatic, mas mataas siya. You give 20 for IV for 4 doses. Then you just recheck. So ito ngayon, pagka nag-inject through IV, ito, tandaan nyo rin ito. Kapag ka nagko-correct kayo, ang isasaksak nyo, halimbawa less than 40 mg per liter, pwede yun sa usual IV line. Pero kung mas mataas ang concentration, more than 40 mg, dapat central line. Halimbawa, nakakabit na sa internal jugular o sa subclavian. Bakit? Ano ang reason? Anybody? Sa tingin nyo, bakit? Bakit kinasa central pagka mataas ang concentration? Ano yan? Masakit. Bakit kaya masakit? Kasi mababurn yung patient. No? Very common yan, lalo na sa government. Pagkasaksak na ganyan, kita mo sunog. Masakit na tapos nasunog pa siya. Lalo na sa pediatric patient, kawawa yung pasyente, tapos i-refer sa amin sa surgery. No, yung pasyente namin nasunog yung ano ba ginawa niya? Nagsaksak kami yung potassium. Kaya nabibisit kami. Gusto na lang namin sabihin, kung inaayos yung trabaho yun, sana hindi ganyan. Iatrogenic yun. Pwede magdemanda pa ngayon yung relative. Diba? Kawawa yung pasyente, pwede sila magdemanda. That is already an iatrogenic injury. Okay, kaya kapag kabatasan dose, wag sa peripheral line, kailangan central line. Okay? Question? We go now to calcium. So, bibilisan ko na. Calcium most abundant electrolyte in the body. Alam naman niyo yan, 99% sa bone. Less than 1% sa ECF. 1 to 3 grams per day. Ito yung normal value, so tandaan na lang. 8.5 to 10.5. Pagka ionized naman, 4.2 to 4.8. Ito yung mga possible cause ng hyper bone meds kasi na-mineralize siya. Ayan, may ECG changes din siya. Shortened QT interval from PR to RS and flattened T-wave. So parang halos the same siya with halo ng potassium problem. Signs and symptoms, anorexia, abdominal pain, weakness, confusion. For hyper, how will you treat? You just give hydration and then diuresis para umihi. Ano mga diuretic na pwede bigay? Katulad na furosemide. Pero kung may bone meds siya, pwede kang magbigay ng bisphosphonate. Kung halimbawa may problema siya sa parathyroid, you can give calcitonin. Kasi yun ang kontra ng parathormone. Okay. And take note, kapag hypercalcemia siya at hindi nyo makita yung cause, ano ang iisipin nyo na pwede possible cause? Anong organ? Ano bang organ na nagkocontrol ng calcium metabolism? Parathyroid. Baka meron siyang hyperparathyroidism. Okay? So yun, i-examine niyo na yung parathyroid. Usually you test that, pwede kayong paggawa ng sesame scan. So pagka nag-sesame scan kayo, that is scintigraphy, magla-line up yun, makikita nyo, hyperparathyroid siya, kaya pala mataas yung calcium. Okay? So kung hypo naman, that is less than the normal value. So pwedeng cause pancreatitis, tissue infection, renal failure. Yan, hypoparathyroidism naman kabaligtaran. Usually, ang isang possible cause, lalo na surgical patient, nag-thyroidectomy, tinanggal yung thyroid. Total. Ang problema, dahil yung parathyroid nakalocate sa likod ng thyroid gland, kumisa nasasama silang lahat. So natanggal mo rin yung parathyroid. Kaya usual cause ay surgical removal. And of course, pag hypocalcemia, ano yung mga symptom ng hypocalcemia? Yung usual carpopedal spasm, Bostek sign, yung mga pinatapik mo dyan, nangihiwi na, Trosu sign. Naturo naman na sa inyo yan, di ba? Impaired oral numbness. Very common, carpopedal spasm, makikita parang nagkukumpong. Dok, naninigas kamay ko. Kala mo nagkukumpong. Okay? So these are just the difference in signs and symptoms of hyper and hypocalcemia. For phosphorus naman, so mataas din siya sa bone. And the normal value is 2.7 to 4.5. Causes, these are the possible causes. I will give you also my slide now. So signs and symptoms, the symptomatics, and how do you treat hyperphosphatemia? So take note, pwedeng sodium chloride, diuretic, hemodialysis, phosphate binder. So ano yan? Yung mga iniinom nyo na maalox, pag nag-hyperacidity kayo, yung aluminum magnesium hydroxide. Okay. Nakakababa na phosphate yon. So pagka hyperphosphatemia kayo, pag-inumin mo yon, bababa. Or kung halimbawa naman, inom kayo ng inom, expect nyo na bababa ang phosphate nyo. Okay? Yan, calcium acetate, pwede ibigay yung dialysis. Kaya nga itong hypophosphatemia, pag uminom kaya aluminum magnesium hydroxide, yung mga maalox, bababa talaga ang phosphate. Aside from malnutrition, diuretics, signs and symptoms, symptomatic confusion. Okay. So how do you treat for hypophosphatemia? You give potassium phosphate or sodium phosphate. So yun ang usual na treatment to IMP. Magnesium is the fourth most common mineral. Excreted both in the urine and feces. Very important in ATP management or metabolism. And the normal value is 1.5 to 2.5. So these are your causes: renal failure, ECG changes, similar to hyperkalemia. And how do you treat hyper? You give 10% calcium gluconate, NSS, diuretics, and hemodialysis. Most of the time, if you have electrolyte disturbances, pwede makorek yan ng hemodialysis kasi i-screen na yan ng machine. Lalo na pag hyper. So, for hypo naman, ito yung mga possible cause for nutrition, GI losses, signs and symptoms, lethargy, decreased reflexes. It could be associated with hypokalemia, hypocalcemia. Okay. So, for hypo, you just give milk of magnesia. So, yun yung mga causes. Gusto ko lang ihabol itong acid-base balance. Naturo na sa inyo sa physiology ito, tama? Tama, no? So you have two types of acid-base disorder. It could be acidosis or alkalosis. So paano yung malalaman? Unang-unang titignan ay pH. So ano ang normal pH? Ano na? Dapat alam yung normal pH yan. Then, pagkatapos nun, titignan nyo kung ano yung carbon dioxide or bicarbonate. Kasi din yung malalaman kung respiratory siya or metabolic. So kung ano bang mataas ang carbon dioxide, ibig sabihin respiratory siya o acidotic siya. Okay? So magkaiba siya. Then, paano yung malalaman kung compensated or hindi? Kasi meron pang compensated or uncompensated. Pag compensated, halimbawa acidotic siya, alam mo na dapat mataas yung acid niya. Yung carbon dioxide, di ba? Ngayon, kung mataas ang bicarbonate niya, ibig sabihin nagko-compensate yun. So, compensated siya. Tama? Kabaliktaran naman kapag acidotic or alkalotic. Okay, the same with respiratory and metabolic. So, magtatanong ako doon sa exam, ha? Aralin nyo kung ano yung difference nung ano yung kung respiratory acidosis ba siya, ganyan. Okay, so ito yung mga possible cause na respiratory acidosis. For metabolic acidosis naman, very important, itong tandaan nyo yung anion gap. So, anion gap, ima-minus lang yung cation sa anion. So, ang cation ay sodium, minus mo ng chloride and bicarbonate. Ang normal value is less than 12. Okay. So, paano pag corrected naman, yung actual? So, most probably, toxic na itong corrected. Baka pagtanong lang ako yung anion gap lang. Okay. So, you have to know the computation. So, yan. For metabolic acidosis, you have increased an ion gap, pwedeng exogenous ingestion, endogenous product. For normal naman, you can have this with acid administration, loss of bicarbonate, and so on. For alkalosis naman, increased bicarbonate, worsened by potassium depletion, paradoxic acidosis. Hypochloremic, hypokalemic, metabolic alkalosis. Ito yung usual, palaging tumatanong kahit sa board exam, kahit sa school kayo magpunta ng surgery. Ang usual cause ng hypochloremic, ang usual problem with acid-base balance with continuous vomiting. Halimbawa, merong obstruction, GI obstruction, halimbawa, tawag dito, pyloric stenosis. So may bala doon sa outlet ng stomach. So gagawin ng bata, suka na suka. Pag sumuka siya, ano nawawala? Hydrochloric acid. So mawawala ang chloride. So hypochloremic na siya. Pag tinapon yung hydrogen ion, madedetect niya ni kidney, uy, ang baba ni hydrogen. So ang gagawin ni kidney ngayon, i-conserve niya si hydrogen at itatapon niya si potassium. So kaya ang pasyente usually nagiging hypokalemic, hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis. Okay, so yun ang yung usual cause ng may chronic vomiting. Nakuha? Sige, binigyan ko kayo ng example kasi baka magtanong or lumabas sa word. Okay. So, sige. You can read on this. So, yan, respiratory versus metabolic compensation. Usually, ang respiratory compensation mabilis. Kapag ka metabolic, alkalotic or acidotic ka, makikita mo na kagad, either bibilis yung paghinga or babagal. Pero yung metabolic compensation, kapag ka respiratory acidotic ka naman or alkalotic, yung metabolic effect, yung compensation niya matagal. It could take up to 2 days. So doon pa lang mag-start na either mag-produce ng bicarbonate o bumaba. Okay? So yun yung difference with regards sa compensation. So ito parang you just review this. Okay, hindi na ako magtanong dyan. This one is just a comparison ng plasma with sterofundin with regards sa component niya. And this is just a algorithm usually ginagawa sa ICU setting. Ang tinetake note lang dito is that hyponatremia with low albumin, you just avoid D5 water and 0.3 NSS. 0.3 sodium solution because it could lead to cerebral edema. So yun lang gustong i-take note dyan nasa baba. Okay, so kung may tatandaan kayo dito, yun. Huwag ibibigay yung D5 water at saka 0.3 sodium solution kung hyponatremia na may low albumin. Okay? This is just a table showing you yung colloid solution. Yung mga kanilang property, the albumin, dextran, starch, gelatin. So, yun lang yung ano lang dyan, yung description lang, pwede yung replihin yun, aralin yung pag-gelatin, yan, bovine collagen, or pag-heta starch, yan, given in coagulopathy and hypochloremic acidosis. So, dextran is glucose polymer. Albumin, ang problema, kung minsan, there could be allergic reaction. Pero usually, isa na lang, pros and cons for albumin. Ang problema sa albumin, kasi usually ang mga patient may albuminemia due to diba, meron silang malnutrition. So, bagsak ang albumin, di ba? Yung ibang doktor, ginagawa, bagsak ang albumin, infuse tayo ng albumin. Yung albumin na ini-infuse, mahal yun, maliit lang na vial yun. Hindi siya ginagamit for malnutrition or nutritional correction. Take note, hindi siya ginagamit. Hindi yun ang tamang gamot. You give parenteral nutrition. Pwede lang siyang ibigay kung meron siyang other factors na magbibigay ng problema sa pasyente. For example, nag-aano na siya, congestion na siya. Pwede ka magbigay ng albumin para lang mabawasan yung congestion, pero hindi siya gamot for hypoalbuminemia. Okay? Yun ang gusto ko yung part regarding doon. Okay. So, yan lang, no? Gusto lang sabihin dyan, hectastarch, collagen. So, this is just a table showing you difference in crystalloid, esteril, and gelatin. Effect ng hydroxy and starch and hemostasis. Ito ang isang problema sa esteril, kaya hindi siya usually binibigay madalas pagka mayroong bleeding yung pasyente kasi bababa ang mga bleeding coagulation factors, yung coagulation ng pasyente. Kaya pag tinanong, anong colloid ang hindi binibigay pagka may bleeding yung pasyente, may problema sa bleeding, esteril or hexa starch. hydroxyethyl starch. Okay? So, yeah. So that's it. Okay. Are there any questions?